You didn't lose everything. You were being cleared for the arrival of someone God himself is sending to rebuild what evil tried to ruin. There comes a moment in the aftermath of devastation when your heart is shattered, your name smeared, and your faith stretched so thin it trembles, where God doesn't just speak, he moves. And when he moves, he doesn't bring explanations or apologies from the narcissist who tried to annihilate your worth. No, he brings someone new, someone anointed, someone divine, someone who doesn't come to patch what's broken, but to replace it with something holy. This person God is sending won't need to understand everything you've been through. Their soul will recognize the ruins the narcissist left behind, and yet they will not see damage. They will see destiny. Because what God allows to be broken, he intends to rebuild stronger. And he does not rebuild alone. Here are 5 powerful signs that God is sending someone into your life who will change everything the narcissist tried to destroy. 1. You begin to feel inner healing, even when no one is there. There's a sacred moment in your healing journey that no one sees. It doesn't come with applause. There's no dramatic turning point that makes it obvious. It creeps in slowly, gently, like morning light seeping through the cracks of a room that sat in darkness for far too long. The people around you might think nothing's changed. Your routine might still look the same. But somewhere, deep inside your spirit, you can feel something stirring. It's not happiness, not yet. But it's not despair anymore either. It's something softer, quieter, steadier. It's healing. And the most astonishing part is this: it happens even though you're still alone. There's no new relationship, no new person swooping in to lift you out of the grief. The narcissist who wrecked your world hasn't returned with remorse. You're not being loved back to life by someone else. You're being restored from within, by God. This healing isn't the kind that comes because circumstances have finally improved or because someone finally gave you closure. In fact, many of the things that broke you may still remain unresolved. The narcissist may still be out there, lying, manipulating, pretending they were the victim. You might still be waking up in the same house where the betrayal happened. You might still feel the sting of memories that haven't yet faded. But even so, the pain doesn't rule you like it used to. There's a little more breath in your lungs, a little more clarity in your thoughts, a little more strength in your soul. And no one handed it to you. No one gave it back. God placed it there, quietly, faithfully. It's the kind of healing that begins when you stop looking to others for answers and start looking up to the only one who has always known the truth. When you stop obsessing over whether they'll ever apologize and start surrendering your need to be understood by people who were never capable of love. When you finally whisper, God, I don't need them to fix this. I just need you to carry me through it. And something begins to shift in the atmosphere of your soul. This is not about forgetting the past. God is not asking you to erase the pain or pretend it never happened. No, he honors the tears. He collects them, Scripture says, in a bottle. Psalm 56:8. But he also does something the narcissist never could. He gives those tears purpose. He turns that suffering into sacred soil, and in that soil he begins to grow something eternal. Resilience, clarity, wisdom, peace. Fruit that doesn't wither, a strength the enemy cannot destroy. That's how you know something divine is happening inside you. The same places that used to trigger anxiety now feel quiet. You can walk through rooms you once avoided and no longer feel like a ghost of who you used to be. The panic attacks are less frequent. The spiral of self-blame is losing its power. And where shame once lived, a holy confidence begins to rise. Not arrogance, not defiance, but the quiet knowing, I am not who they said I was. I am who God says I am. You begin to dress differently, not to impress anyone, but because you're reclaiming your dignity. You begin to organize your space, not because you're expecting company, but because your soul no longer wants to live in chaos. You read Scripture again, not as a desperate cry for escape, but as a slow return to truth. You no longer beg God to remove the pain. Now, you thank Him for using it to reintroduce you to yourself. And here's where it gets even more powerful. You stop waiting. Not just waiting for the narcissist to change, or for justice to be served, or for someone new to walk through the door. You stop waiting for your life to begin again, because you realize it already has. This healing is not the result of time alone. It's not because you distracted yourself long enough or worked hard enough to move on. No. This is what supernatural grace looks like. The same God who watched you be torn down is now rebuilding you from the inside out, piece by sacred piece. And he is doing it before anyone else arrives. Why? Because God will never send someone to complete what you haven't allowed him to start. He won't hand your heart to someone new until he's first restored it in his presence. Not because he wants you perfect, but because he wants you protected. He knows that your worth must be rooted in him, not in someone else's affection. So he pours in his love. He quiets your fears. He teaches you how to stand in the mirror and say, I am still valuable. I am still chosen. I am still here. And when that inner restoration takes root, it changes the very atmosphere of your life. The people who once drained you will no longer feel like your responsibility. The conversations you used to replay over and over begin to fade into silence. The constant urge to explain yourself disappears, because now your identity is no longer hanging in the balance of someone else's opinion. It is grounded, anchored, held in the arms of a God who saw everything they did to you and still said, I will make beauty from this. You may not see it yet, but you're already walking in the promise. And the clearest sign is this: you're no longer desperate for someone to come and save you. You know God already has. You're no longer aching to be chosen, because you finally believe you always were. And that kind of healing, that kind of steady, unseen resurrection, it is heaven's announcement that someone is on the way. Not a fixer, not a replacement, not a savior, but a reflection of what God has already rebuilt in you. So if you're in this place right now, where no one seems to notice how far you've come, where you're still alone in the physical but no longer crumbling in spirit, know this: you are not waiting in vain. You are healing for a reason. And when the one God sends steps into your life, they won't be startled by your strength. They'll be drawn to it, because your strength will carry the fragrance of grace, not pride, not pretense, but proof that what the narcissist tried to destroy, God has already begun to restore. 2. Doors begin to open that you cannot explain with logic. Sometimes the biggest proof that God is doing something behind the scenes isn't in a dramatic breakthrough. It's not in someone showing up to apologize. It's not even in the narcissist finally getting exposed or facing consequences. Sometimes the proof is quieter, but far more powerful. It shows up in the form of open doors, opportunities, people, and divine connections that make no logical sense. You didn't earn them, you didn't chase them. They weren't the result of striving, they were sent. These doors don't just open by chance, they open in a pattern that only God could orchestrate. You'll begin to notice small invitations into new spaces, a job offer you weren't looking for, a conversation with someone you just met that somehow speaks directly to your soul, an event you almost didn't attend but turned out to be life-changing. These are not accidents, these are signals. Because when God is about to send someone into your life to help you rebuild what the narcissist tried to destroy, he doesn't just prepare the person, he prepares the path. He doesn't just mend your heart, he repositions your steps. And sometimes that repositioning feels strange, even uncomfortable. Suddenly, you're invited into rooms where you don't feel qualified. You're surrounded by people who speak to your spirit, not your shame. You find yourself longing for things you used to avoid: real connection, spiritual depth, honest community. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. God is shifting you, mentally, emotionally, even geographically, to intersect with destiny. And this shift won't always feel spiritual at first. It might look completely ordinary. You may accept a coffee meeting that leads to a new friend who later introduces you to a person who plays a pivotal role in your healing journey. Or maybe God gives you the courage to start attending a Bible study again after years of isolation. And there, in that room of strangers, you encounter someone who reflects back to you everything the narcissist tried to erase. These moments don't always feel miraculous at first glance, but over time you begin to sense something greater is happening here. Because the narcissist made you believe you'd always be stuck. They told you no one else would want you, no one else would see your value. They trained you to settle for loneliness, for manipulation, for spiritual emptiness. But God steps in and says, watch me make a liar out of them. And he does it not by crushing them, but by elevating you. He starts giving you access to people and places that honor what you've been through, without needing you to re-explain it. You begin to feel safe without having to explain your trauma. You begin to speak and feel heard. You begin to show up without shrinking. And perhaps the most miraculous part of all, you begin to hope again. Without fear, hope used to hurt. It used to feel risky, because every time you hoped for love, it was used against you. But now, God is awakening a different kind of hope. The kind that comes from being placed, not pursued. You're not striving to get somewhere, you're being led. And with every door he opens, he's whispering, "Keep walking, I'm guiding you. And the person I'm sending, they're walking toward you too." These open doors are not rewards for being strong. They are acts of mercy. They are the result of God seeing the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the days you barely held on, the hours you questioned your worth. And now, instead of allowing you to stay stuck in the debris of what was, he's building a new life in front of you. But here's what you must understand. These open doors require faith. You must walk through them, even if you don't feel ready. You must say yes, even when the past still echoes in your ears. You must be willing to believe that just because someone hurt you before doesn't mean everyone will. That just because you were mishandled by the narcissist doesn't mean you're not ready for honor, softness, and sacred love now. So if doors are opening that don't make sense, if people are showing up with kindness and wisdom that stirs your spirit, don't shut it down out of fear. Don't retreat. Lean in. Because God is not just opening doors, he's opening your future. And the person he's sending may be standing on the other side of one of those doors. If you've noticed doors opening lately that you can't explain, invitations, conversations, peaceful shifts, don't ignore it. That's not chance. That's God moving. Comment below with the words, "I know this is God." Let it be a declaration of faith that what he is opening, no narcissist can close. 3. Toxic relationships suddenly end or reveal themselves completely. Before the right person walks into your life, God often makes sure the wrong ones are removed. And sometimes that removal feels like the most painful kind of mercy. It doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't come with clear explanations. It comes suddenly, sometimes violently, always undeniably, like a tearing away of something that once felt essential, but was always poisonous underneath. It's the moment when the people you used to bend over backward for reveal their true colors or disappear entirely. This is not punishment. This is preparation. See, God isn't just trying to bless you with a healthy, loving relationship. He's trying to make sure that relationship has room to grow. And some people, no matter how long they've been in your life, no matter how much history you share, are not meant to walk with you into your healing. They were part of your survival, but they are not part of your restoration. The narcissist isn't always the only one God removes. There may be others, friends, family members, even church members, whose presence in your life was subtly keeping you bound. Bound to old identities, bound to shame, bound to patterns of performance. These are people who tolerated you when you were broken, but feel threatened now that you're growing. They comforted you when you were crying, but now criticize you when you set boundaries. And at first you question yourself. Am I becoming cold? Am I cutting off too many people? But the truth is simpler. You're waking up. And when God starts revealing who people really are, it's not to shame them. It's to liberate you. Because the love that's coming into your life is not a love that will require you to shrink, silence yourself, or carry the emotional weight of someone else's chaos. It's a love that will demand honesty, purity, space, and peace. And before that kind of love can arrive, the counterfeits have to go. So one by one, the masks begin to fall. A friend who always found a way to diminish your growth finally says the words that confirm what you've always suspected. They don't really celebrate you, they tolerate you. The family member who used guilt to keep you small suddenly erupts in rage when you say no for the first time. The person you were still holding on to, even after they betrayed you, finally shows you just how far they're willing to go to protect their own image at the expense of your heart. And though it hurts, something in you exhales, because you're no longer in denial. You no longer feel the need to excuse what you now recognize as spiritual manipulation or emotional decay. The people you once fought to keep in your life begin to remove themselves, not because you failed them, but because you outgrew the version of yourself that needed them. What many don't understand is this: God is not a God of confusion. When he starts to move in your life, he brings clarity. He exposes, he purges, and sometimes the exposure is subtle. a pattern you can no longer ignore, a discomfort you can no longer explain away. But other times, the exposure is public, messy, and undeniable. That's not cruelty. That's God tearing away the false to make space for the true. It's like he's saying, you asked me for someone who would honor you, but first, let me show you who never really did. This purging season can feel lonely. You may find yourself surrounded by silence, fewer texts, fewer invites. But don't mistake this for rejection. It's protection, because what you tolerate in this season becomes the foundation for what you receive in the next. And God, in His mercy, would rather you sit in silence for a while than walk into your future carrying people who would poison it. And even when the narcissist is long gone, even when you've already severed ties, there may still be remnants, enablers, flying monkeys, emotionally codependent people who kept you tethered to old pain. God will bring them to the surface too, not to punish them, but to free you, because the love He is sending is too holy to compete with half-truths, fake friendships, or one-sided loyalties. And here's the truth most people won't say. Not everyone who claims to love you is capable of walking with you through the kind of transformation God is doing in your life. Not everyone who shared your pain is prepared to honor your healing. And that's okay. Because sometimes the clearest sign that God is sending someone new is that He starts removing everything old that cannot honor the new version of you. So when relationships fall apart without warning, when people leave and you don't understand why, when the ones you thought were safe suddenly show their fangs, don't rush to fill the void. Let it be empty. Because that emptiness, that space, that stillness, it's not a punishment, it's a sanctuary. It's the place where God prepares your soul to receive someone who will not compete with your peace, but will protect it. Someone who won't benefit from your wounds, but will bless your healing. And before they arrive, God ensures that every person who is holding a place in your life without honoring your purpose is gone. Because when the person He's sending shows up, they won't walk into chaos. They'll walk into peace, and they'll know they've found a heart that is no longer defined by who left, but by the God who stayed. 4. You begin to sense that someone is coming, even if you don't know who they are. There is a kind of knowing that doesn't come from your mind. It comes from the deepest part of your spirit. It's not imagined, and it's not wishful thinking. It's something older than your logic and quieter than your fears. It comes in the form of an inner whisper, a stillness you can't explain, and it usually begins after a long season of heartbreak, recovery, and silence. This knowing says, someone is coming. Not someone to rescue you, not someone to erase the past, but someone whose arrival marks the moment your soul steps out of survival and into alignment. You begin to feel it before there's any evidence, before any introductions, before any new connections. Your soul begins to shift. Where there was once anxiety, there is now anticipation. Not the anxious kind, but the kind of expectation that comes when you sense that God is near, and that He's been orchestrating something for far longer than you realized. You feel it not because you're desperate, but because you finally become still enough to hear what heaven has been preparing all along. Your nights become calmer, you sleep deeper. You don't wake up with that hollow feeling anymore, the one that used to beg for validation. Your prayers begin to sound different. You no longer plead for someone to come fix what the narcissist broke. Instead, you find yourself saying, God, let me be ready for what you are sending. And in that simple shift, your spirit moves from longing to receiving. You begin to carry yourself differently, not as someone waiting to be chosen, but as someone who has already been chosen. You no longer feel frantic when someone new enters your life, because you're not looking for another project, another emotional roller coaster. You're looking for peace. You've learned that real love doesn't come wrapped in chaos. It comes dressed in divine timing. And that's what this feeling is, timing. It's not based on any dating app or social circle or plan you've created. It's the quiet, sacred awareness that God is weaving threads beyond your understanding. You feel it when you hear certain worship songs. You feel it when you open your Bible and the verses suddenly speak about love, restoration, and new beginnings. You feel it when you step outside and the wind brushes your face. And for the first time in a long time, you feel open. You're not vulnerable, just open. You begin to notice things. How much stronger you've become. How much more discerning. How much less reactive you are to old triggers. You can sense that something has been completed within you. Not in perfection, but in readiness. You no longer define your worth by who walked away. You no longer rehearse arguments in your mind. You don't try to change the narrative. You don't need closure, because God has already closed that door, and you've stopped trying to force it back open. And now, with hands no longer clinging to the past, you begin to receive, not just the idea of someone new, but the deeper truth that you are no longer who you were when the narcissist left. You've been transformed, quietly, faithfully, steadily. God has reshaped the way you see yourself. He's restored what they tried to destroy, not just your trust, but your sense of belonging in His plan. And with that shift, the awareness begins to grow stronger. You're no longer asking, will I ever meet someone? Now, your spirit says, I feel them coming. It's not about timelines or strategy. It's not about waiting by the phone. It's about listening to the rhythm of grace that is now moving within you. It's about trusting that the God who healed your wounds did not do so in vain. He is too intentional to restore you without reason. He is too faithful to let the narcissist be the final chapter. And so, even in your solitude, you feel full. Not because someone is standing next to you, but because God is standing within you. And He's letting you feel the echo of someone who is being sent, not because you begged, but because you were finally ready to receive without needing to be rescued. This is a sacred knowing. You can't prove it to anyone. You don't have to. Because when the person arrives, they won't be a shock to your spirit. They'll be a confirmation, not a surprise, but a continuation. A breath your soul already took before your body ever met them. And when they appear, you will not panic. You will not ask, is this too good to be true? You will simply remember the stillness that came long before, and you'll know, I've been expecting you. 5. You begin to attract people who are completely different from the past. Loving, honest, and healing. Something begins to change in the atmosphere around you when your heart has been healed by the hand of God. Not just patched up, not just distracted, but truly renewed from the inside out. It's subtle at first, almost too gentle to notice. But one day you look up and you realize the people around you don't feel like emotional threats anymore. You're no longer attracting those who come to take, manipulate, or drain you. Instead, you're encountering people who feel safe, present, and unexpectedly kind. And, perhaps for the first time in your life, you don't flinch. Because when God heals you, He doesn't just change how you feel, He changes what you allow. And the shift becomes visible in the kind of people who start showing up in your life. They don't come with flashy promises or grand emotional displays. In fact, they might seem almost unremarkable on the surface. No drama, no intensity, no games. But what they carry is rare. Consistency, integrity, peace. Where once you were surrounded by manipulation and mind games, you now find yourself in conversations marked by mutual respect. You speak and they listen, not because they're trying to gain something from you, but because they genuinely care. The narcissist made love feel unsafe. They used closeness as a weapon. Intimacy became a trap, a transaction. Every gesture twisted into a future debt you'd have to repay in emotional pain. You were trained to question kindness, to brace for cruelty, to see affection as bait. And now, when someone enters your life with soft eyes and steady hands, your first instinct might still be to run, to question their motives, to wonder, what do they want from me? But then they do something unfamiliar. They stay. Not because you beg them to. Not because you prove yourself. Not because you bend and contort to be chosen. They stay because they recognize something in you that's not broken, something sacred. And their presence begins to disarm the defense mechanisms that years of trauma had built. Where once your walls were sky high and fortified by silence, now they begin to lower. Not all at once, but gradually, carefully, with God's timing. And it's not because you're desperate to let them in. It's because your soul is finally ready to be seen without being hurt. This kind of person doesn't try to rush you. They don't pry into your past like a thief searching for weakness. They sit with your silence. They honor your process. They mirror back to you what love was always meant to feel like, gentle, strong, and freeing. They're not offended by your strength, nor are they intimidated by your story. They understand that pain can shape a person, but it doesn't define them, and they treat you accordingly. Their presence begins to recalibrate your expectations. You stop expecting abandonment. You stop assuming that the other shoe is going to drop. You begin to trust that being seen doesn't have to lead to being punished, that love doesn't have to mean control, that vulnerability doesn't have to mean pain. And most of all, you begin to understand that you were never too much. You were just too real for those who preferred illusions. And it's not just one person. It's a pattern. You begin attracting mentors who speak life into you, friends who pray over you, strangers who affirm you without knowing why. There's a new frequency in your life, a holy rhythm. And those who walk in darkness, the manipulators, the charmers, the spiritually empty, they no longer gravitate toward you. Or if they do, they don't last. Because they cannot survive in the light that now lives inside you. The narcissist tried to convince you that you'd always be alone, that no one else could love you, that no one else would tolerate your heart, your strength, your boundaries. But now, by the grace of God, you're being shown otherwise. Not through words, but through people. You're no longer chasing love. Love is now responding to the wholeness you've fought so hard to reclaim. And when it finally arrives in its purest form, not romanticized, not transactional, not forced, you recognize it. Not because it reminds you of something you've had before, but because it reflects everything God has been doing inside you all along. This is the final sign. The outer world begins to mirror the inner work. The fruit of your healing becomes visible not just in how you feel, but in who you welcome, who you allow, and who is drawn to the light that now radiates from your restored soul. Not everyone can enter this new space. Not everyone is meant to. But the ones who do, they won't come to complete you. They'll come to walk beside you. Not as saviors, not as distractions, but as living evidence that God truly restores everything the narcissist tried to destroy. And this time, you'll believe it. Because this time, it won't just feel good. It will feel true.